Hello, guys! So, I'm filming this intro separately right after the podcast with Alex. It's been a day since we recorded this, and I hope you guys enjoy all of the things that this podcast has to offer. We get into deep conversations while also having lighthearted topics, as well as introducing our first sex segment, which is going to be featured in every single episode, talking different things about sex and sexology and people's upbringing, and if their childhood had anything that was taboo or if it was more open as a subject. I kind of want to be sharing these conversations and having open conversations with different people about these things. So I hope you guys enjoy this podcast, and I will see you guys later. Back into it.
Okay. So, hello, guys. Here we are. We are back on the podcast. This is episode 3 of season 2. And here today, I have my dear friend, Alex KS.
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. So,
Oh,
yes, Alex and I have been friends for a long time. Um, Care to explain how you had the interactions with me before we met?
well,
And then
actually, yeah, of course. So this all started pretty much on the gram, as many of you know, or maybe not. That's just why I'm explaining the story in the first place. So, I think she actually started following me. I usually always do the, follow back thing because that's
Mhm.
just how I am. Eye for an eye, literally. Um, And so at that point, we didn't really interact much. She was just, a follower on my list and vice versa. And, watch her stories every now and then. And what really got me, I think, first of all of you definitely know this who know her personally or have been tuning into her social media. She is the queen of twerk, after all. Um, so it's pretty much like, okay, so she does her thing, cool, whatever. I didn't pay any mind to that really. But what got me, as I was going to say, was she started speaking Russian in one of her stories, and at the time that kind of threw me for a loop because I was dating a Russian girl and wanting to learn the language, and I knew that was not her background, so I was wondering how is she so fluent in this. So that's when I first messaged her, and then we kind of hit it off from there. We've been like great friends ever since, and she's my twin. Basically, she's a female version of me in every sense, like it feels. So we've got this synchronized telepathy thing going on. So
Definitely. Alex is also a Gemini,
yeah.
and we have like the same moon and the same rising, and it's just like so many similarities as is, but then when we did his like birth chart and stuff, we actually started to realize we're like, oh my god, we are twins.
For a long time, actually, we were just waiting for the differences to start popping out, actually,
Yeah.
initially.
We have like like very few differences, like even like I think the revenge thing.
Probably. Yep. Exploitation. No, it's true. I have a little bit of a small vindictive streak to those who slate me and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, but she handles things in a slightly different manner than me. That's true.
It's as of lately I've been realizing that I've been getting more like I guess triggered, like more annoyed, easily annoyed by people and things around me. And I'm like, I never used to be like that. I'm usually kind of like more, I don't know, like patient about it. Like it takes a lot to irritate me, but as of lately, I'm just like getting annoyed at like so many people and things. And I was even talking to my boyfriend Andrew about this, and then he was like, "Oh, I just think you're getting older and you're dealing with less bullshit."
I mean, that is true. That is one of the factors. And I can. So, for those of you that don't know, I am a bit older than her. This is
Hmm.
a fact. It is true. You get a little less tolerable of things, but my recommendation to build up patience, I would say, work at a call center. It worked for me. You know.
That's the worst for me. Like I did that when I did like receptionist like jobs and stuff, like I was working at a law firm. Can't mention
Mm.
names and shit because apparently like they want that like
Legal purposes, yes.
legal purposes. I don't need to be sued.
Nobody
But
does.
yeah, it was an interesting law firm. And I can't even say the specific type, but I had to deal with a lot of people that were under distress and stuff. And people would just be like yelling at me and like screaming at me or like complaining about things that like I didn't have control of. And
I
I would
feel like
just
somehow that's even worse because so a call center is one thing, but when you've got somebody yelling legal jargon at you that you already don't understand, like high and intense vocabulary that you may not be prepared for necessarily, especially if you're new, that yeah, I don't want to do that.
the
Bringing
funny
back
part,
memories
yeah.
of university for me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's interesting. Like I remember like saying like, "Oh, so but like what happens if they're like, being rude to you and things like that?" And like they're yelling at they're like, funny story is you can't hang up." Like it's like you can't
Oh
hang up.
no.
Like you need to wait until they hang up, but some people don't want to hang up. So you're just like trying to conclude this call and keep repeating like, "Sorry, there's nothing I can do, but I can redirect you to somebody." Like it's like you're gonna be that bitch.
See, for me, it was a bit different. Like people could not wait to hang up because it was all television and radio ratings research surveys and stuff like that. So slightly different. They didn't
Yeah,
want to do it.
they
Whereas,
didn't want.
yeah, they're calling you for their own law problems in
Mm-hmm.
that case. So, I mean, that's unfortunate that they want to stay on the phone and give you a hard time. So I guess I'm going to apologize on their behalf because I'm a nice person, unlike them. Or maybe they are. I don't know. I'm not gonna knock anybody's character. Like legal stuff is always stressful.
Oh yeah, definitely. So let's see. What another thing is that Alex and I are both very like nerdy people. So we have like our musical sides, but we also have the very like nerdy sides and the I guess the know-it-all.
Deep talks, deep talks. Which actually, it's perfect for this.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So do you want to share about more about like what you do or what you studied and stuff like that? I think people would be really interested in hearing this and stuff.
well, sure, no problem. I've been all over the map actually with that, as often Geminis are.
Mhm.
Everyone can attest to this. So,
Definitely.
initially, like out of high school, I did the usual thing where you were expected to go to university by your parents. Didn't really know what I wanted to do per se. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I actually started at York University with a BA of psychology, and I
Ooh.
I did about maybe 3 years of that, and then I just said, screw this.
Wow,
I stopped going to classes. I just kind of like quit. So I
Mhm.
didn't even finish my degree there. Sorry, Dad, because at the time he was paying for those courses. Then I did the band thing.
Mhm.
I was always into music growing up, and that was my real passion. But of course, I had the usual spiel from him that was, "Oh, you're not going to make any money doing this, blah blah blah." So I, you know, really couldn't go to school for that, even though I wanted to.
Mhm.
But I pursued that on the side of, just every day in high school. Like you could see my grades steadily decline up until the very last year when I had to get into university because I was just practicing guitar for about 4 hours a day when I first started, and I picked it up when I was 15, and I never looked back after that. It was I just discovered Nirvana in high school, and then that's how I got more into the rock and metal side of things. Well, it progressed to metal eventually.
Mhm.
So after my leave from psychology, I went into band life, and I basically joined my first serious metal band, which was a deathcore band back in around 2012. Did that for a few years, and when shit hit the fan there, as things often do, with all the drama that goes on in the local music scene and whatnot, um, I felt like I had like hit rock bottom and I lost everything, so I wanted to restart from scratch. And I was trying to think of what was a stable career and what would be lucrative and what would be, I guess, kind of uh, well, just you wouldn't risk not making money in it in the case of, social disasters and things like that. I thought science is always going to be around. Science is ever evolving. There's always going to be a job in that field. You can't go wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was on vacation at that time in Cuba to clear my head, and I got all these thoughts while I was staring at the horizon of the beach and stuff like that. So I was relaxed enough to kind of and level headed enough to try and think about my next main move. And at this point, I was 26 years old, so I'm like, I gotta do something for stability's sake. And so I went back and I decided to enroll in Seneca at York. And I wound up this time actually graduating and completing my chemical laboratory technician diploma. And so I was working in a lab for a while, but always came back to the music on the side. That just never went away. So
Oh yes. Yeah, I think like as even like as a Gemini as well, like we need that creative outlet. We have like all of the intellectual side and all of that stuff. And but we need somewhere like to, you know,
you have to. It keeps you
express
sane.
ourselves. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Because I guarantee you that what you were talking about earlier about losing your patience, if I wasn't doing music, that would have happened a long, long time ago, and probably to a much worse effect
Oh yeah.
than the vendettas that you've known me to have.
Yeah, I think I just had like a moment there where I realized like I hadn't been like singing as much lately or doing as much music as I like. I guess I don't know. Some days I just kind of like stop, and when I stop, I always get more irritated. So it's like
Yeah, that makes
whenever I
sense to me.
start singing or start playing again or stuff like that, then it's like when I kind of like, okay, I'm more calm. Like yesterday, for example, like I was like just in a really bad mood. And later on, like I was just like, I'm just gonna sing, just gonna belt out some tunes. And also just singing like really I find like singing songs that you can belt, that you kind of like release that tension
So
is
here's the thing I'm
actually
going to
very
ask you,
yeah.
and I
Go
didn't mean to
ahead.
cut you off there,
No,
but
go ahead.
so with regards to singing those songs when you're in a particular mood, are you finding that you're matching the mood to the song, or are you trying to find something that's the complete and polar opposite? So if you're upset, are you trying to sing happier tunes, or are you
That's
singing
funny.
angry tunes?
That's actually pretty funny because we like I had this conversation with my brother yesterday because he's just like, wow, he's like, you're in some mood. You're singing like these sad songs. I'm like, it's not on purpose though. I'm like, it's just like the
Uh,
songs I wanted to sing, they just happen to be. But I guess it's because like a lot of sad songs too, they tend to have a little bit more like emphasis on like higher notes or longer notes or stuff
they
like that. Like,
do. They do, and they really. I think they're the ones that draw out the most emotion. To be honest, like you're more likely to be singing along to a sad or a more depressing song. I think when you're in that zone, in
mm-hmm,
comparison to when you're actually in a happy mood and singing along to a happier melody during the same time. I
mm-hmm,
don't know why that is. I guess it's just that whole it's always like that when you have the good and the bad or like the happy and the sad. It's always like the more negative side seems to have the more potent powerful pull, but
mm-hmm.
the good eventually always prevails. But you've got the yin and yang thing going on no matter what, and that kind of brings you
Exactly.
back to what we're all trying to like reach, which is balance.
Mm-hmm.
Very hard thing to do regardless of what area of life we're talking about, whether that's, talking about work life balance, friendships, relationships, all those things,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do find like sometimes like when you're sad, you need to sing happy songs, and then when you're happy, you need to sing sad songs.
But the funny thing is, do you ever notice that when you're really happy and you're singing a really happy tune, everyone else around you gets pissed off because
That's true.
they're not on the same, like, I guess, wavelength of happiness that you are in a particular
Mm-hmm.
moment. And how can they be? Because everybody's an individual, right? We're all going through
Definitely.
our own particular moods and stuff. So, but I just notice that more often they're just like, hey, shut the fuck up.
You see, like that's never bothered me. Like my mom has always said that like since I was little and stuff, and even as a teenager as well. Like she'd be like, "Oh, like Lila, like right now, it's too much," and then I'd be like, "Ah!" Like really more, even more loud, just
Yeah, yeah.
because she told me not to. I would be like, "Fuck that!" Like I'd still do it. But
That was the
she
little rebel in you, yeah.
exactly, but she would still be like, it's funny because like I've just always been like that. Like for her, on the other hand, she said that when she was younger, she also had like a kind of like the talent for singing and performing, but her family was not as supportive. And then
Mm,
they would like tell her like, no, not right now, not right now. And then she would eventually kind of stopped. So she didn't really push
that's
through that.
unfortunate.
You know, that's the unfortunate part is like some people they have that, I don't know, like that I don't give a fuck type attitude, and the other people like don't. It's a little bit more like sensitive, I guess, like personal when it comes to that stuff. So
Yeah, it really depends. And I think the ones that have the don't give a fuck attitude, I mean, they obviously it's Darwinian theory, survival of the fittest. So you maintain your, artistic stance and you push forward in a sense to almost prove that, like, I'm not going to say haters because they're your parents or whatever, in some cases, or family, but
definitely.
just prove the naysayers wrong. That,
Mm,
like, I can get somewhere doing this and I do enjoy this, and you don't get to take that away from me, type of, thing,
exactly.
essentially.
Yeah. I also think that's like though like the combination of and it's like my listeners know that I always talk about astrology, but the
Mhm.
combination of just like the Gemini being airy and talented and really not giving a fuck, and then combination with Leo who loves spotlight, loves
Mhm.
attention, you know, lives for that. And then the combination of like Scorpio who's kind of like mysterious and edgy and kind of like, you know, they're sensitive but they don't show it kind of thing.
You know
It's
what?
like all of that. Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second, because you actually just made me think of something now. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had this experience in your life as far as interactions with other people, be it friendship or more, but
Hmm.
like, obviously those signs are all a part of us, specifically. But have you tried dating that sign? You'd think that if you date that sign and it's a part of you, there'd be some kind of relation in terms of like making it easier to interact with those types of people. But the only experience I've ever had with a Leo was too much for me.
Oh yeah.
For example, and Scorpio. Oh God, don't even get me started on that. Just like that brutal, like, venomous, like, tongue, man.
Oh
When they want
yeah.
to, be. You think I'm vindictive? Whoosh.
That's because like they're like pure, you know, like the pure
Yeah.
Scorpio kind of thing. Like my sister, for example, you know, like I always make jokes with like my mom, my sister, and me, and then I'm like, my mom is like, forgive and forget. My like, and I'm like, forgive, never forget. And
Yep,
then my
exactly.
and my
Exactly.
sister is never forgive, never forget.
Is she one of your listeners, actually? I'm sure she's going to appreciate
Oh, she'll
that.
probably she says like she agrees. Every time I say that, she's like, "Oh yeah," like, and you know it. You know, like she gets like so passionate about it. I'm like, okay.
Well, I mean, she knows who she is. Then at the end of the day,
Oh,
as
definitely.
we all should know,
Mm-hmm. For
in
sure.
truth. But that's
Yeah.
part of the journey, right?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like with the dating of the signs though, like I haven't really like dated a Leo, but I have had good experiences like with like casually dating Leos. Uh but
I
with
wish I could say the
Scorpios,
same.
I'm with Scorpios, I actually had like my first partner. Well, it was like 3 years. It was is Scorpio, and
Mhm.
wasn't too bad. But there was some parts that I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, but I guess it's because my brother and my sister are both like Scorpios, so I kind of know how to deal with
It's the
Scorpios.
you know what it is, though. It's the
Yeah.
passive aggressiveness. That's
Yeah.
that's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But then
Water
again,
signs though.
we have that ourselves. If we're being honest, we also have a
I
little bit of that. I mean, I'm not
think
going to
yeah.
deny that.
Definitely. I think it's mostly because of the we're a little colder though. Like, you know, like we have a little bit less, like it's not like that we're just not as like emotional when it comes to like we have a lot of emotions within us. We're very sensitive people,
Oh,
but
absolutely,
we
yeah.
don't really, it's not really shown in the same way, like for example that a water sign would show, and they have like the passive aggressive nature, but their emotions are like worn on their sleeve type thing. And then they look at us, which oftentimes I find this happens. You can speak for yourself, but oftentimes like um people tell me, they're like, oh my god, you're like so cold and like you don't really care, and like, you know, like have like a, and after I'm like, no, it's not that, it's just that like the way I express myself is very different than having a very like emotional like expression like that. I get that, that's from my music. You know,
Interestingly enough, I get the complete opposite there.
interesting,
I get told that I care too much and that I
interesting.
need to like hold back a little bit
You know,
or whatever.
that may be like a Gemini man versus Gemini women thing. Because I know like this other Gemini guy that like he's very like he has like too much like strong emotions in a sense, where um sometimes I tell him, and if he might be listening to this podcast, who knows? Sometimes I tell him, I'm like, I was like, yeah, you know, you would benefit from having less of that. But
Oof.
for me, it's the opposite
You
because
you got to be careful with how you word that. You do know that. Like you of all
yeah.
people should know
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, like for me, I know that like I'm very like like logical and analytical in a lot of senses, even though I have like a lot of like
that. Hmm.
creative sides and stuff. I think because of the fact that I don't speak from like I feel. I speak from like I know.
Yeah. You know
Instead of
what?
the I feel, you know?
It's funny you mentioned that because with the whole like I analyze stuff to death.
Yeah.
To death. I went
Yeah.
actually recently, not too long ago, with a friend to an escape room, and it was such a basic puzzle to solve. And I was there. So, for example, I'm trying to remember what it was exactly, but it was something along the effect of in this particular escape room, you had pictures of like different like x-rays of bone fragments and stuff like that, but you also had like the scientific terms of the and the names of each of the bones and stuff and anatomy and things like that listed on the wall, and there was a number beside them. So I'm thinking, oh, these pictures correspond to one of the names, and then that name corresponds to a number, and that part of that number is part of the code, so you just have to put the order of the dates. But really, what the code was you don't even have to look at the names or the number at all. You just count the number of breaks in the X-ray, and that's the code. It was simple. And she wound up solving it, and I'm just sitting there like, you know what? It was still a very good attempt. You know,
Yeah.
it's just my brain went way too far with the thing.
Oh yeah. But
And
that
rule of thumb,
actually, that has like
yeah.
advantages though. I mean, like, cause like we think ahead in situations. Like we are like, I find that even with like situations, I always think of like the multiple outcomes of a situation. So that I'm always prepared for
Mhm.
like what outcome it is. Cause I'm always over analyzing, overthinking. Like it's just like my brain starts to think, okay, if this like if I'm going to tell this person this thing, how will they react? And I think about the negative and I think about the positive and then I think about the so and I think about like every single situation. But sometimes still, sometimes it works, like oftentimes it works to my favor, but sometimes people respond in a way that I was just like, oh my god, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, you know what? That's the interesting part, and sometimes that happens. And it's always the simplest of the solutions too. You find that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is with the overthinking, it's a blessing and a curse. I find,
Yeah, definitely.
but it keeps me up, and like my brain is so active around 1 to 2 in the morning, and
Oh yeah,
that's usually, interestingly enough, the time that I am very artistically creative. So
same.
it's the best time for me to write lyrics down, um, any melodies if I have it, if I can get away with, at 2 a.m. kind of noodling quietly on the
Yeah, cool.
guitar while other people are asleep, like in the next room or whatever, right? But no, it's a very interesting thing for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find like as of lately, like I've been going to bed like an old lady. Like I've been going to bed at like 10:30.
Oh,
And
can
then
we
I'm
trade
like
lives, please? Because I'm still falling asleep probably at like 3, 4, sometimes
I
5.
was doing that for like a long time. Especially when I started like dating Andrew and stuff, like because his work schedule was just like so fucked. And then I would like stay up like till like 3, 4 a.m. and stuff.
Mhm.
But then like I ended up realizing like I'm like, oh my god, I'm waking up at noon. Oh my god, I'm waking up at 2. So I was like, I can't. Like, but I'd still find that it's still, even though I wake up kind of, I guess, early-ish, like 8:30 or 9 o'clock,
Right?
I still take a very long time to get going. Like my get going is still at night. Like when it's like 5 o'clock, it's like slowly it starts to kind of like I'm like, okay, now I can do this and now I can do
Yep.
that. Now I can exercise. Now I can, like, for me it's never like, oh, I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna go outside for a run, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give her that. Like it takes me too like I'm too slow for that in
You know what's funny?
in that.
So, word to the viewers, basically for us, it's exactly the same. There is no when you wake up, we're not actually awake yet.
Yeah,
It's just kind of a very slow, progressive.
our eyes are open.
Yeah, we're functioning, but our brain is just not there. We're just kind of going through the motions, like robotically, so to speak, until we actually like have a jolt in our system, and then we're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shit, we do have something to do. Okay, and then, but again, that's not instantaneous like most of you people. Regardless of whether we have coffee, not, although coffee helps,
Coffee
um,
helps.
it does. But the other thing that helps, and I hate it, like it's such a love hate at the same time. If somebody wakes you up because you guys have plans, or like they immediately need you to do something, and they wake you up like a drill sergeant, that's the only thing that jolts us up awake. But
100%.
we are not happy about that. I'm gonna make that perfectly crystal clear.
Yeah.
Like we'll oblige, but we will be moody as fuck.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I don't like for example, like I think the earliest I could probably wake up is 7. That's the earliest. Like
I
I
can do
can't.
earlier, but I will fall back asleep.
Yeah, I mean I like I could wake up when it's time to travel and shit, 6, 5, 4, whatever. But even then, I'm like, holy fuck, how do people do this shit like every day? My dad, for example, he wakes up at 4 a.m. every day.
It
4
sucks. I can tell
a.m.
you. Like my old job when I was working at that chemical company before in 2018, just to 2020, there were some cases like normally it was like your basic 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
but there were instances where my shift, for whatever reason, whether I maybe had to make up hours or I was away a particular day, I had to get up at 6 o'clock and get
Oh
in for
my.
work, starting at 6 until like 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon. Do the early morning shift, not just the morning shift.
Oh, here's my Zoom thing. Let me just fix this.
Oh yeah.
Always. Let's hope this works.
Oh, you do that too. See, that's another thing. I sometimes sing out tasks that I'm doing. People find that really bizarre, but it's a thing we do. I used to do
Right?
that in the company as well. I was pushing around carts of chemicals, and I'm just like, can't wait till my shift is over, bitch. Random stuff like that.
Okay, now I have to get my phone. So, Alex, you can actually talk about a little bit of how we how we met at Objects that first time. Do you remember when you came to my house first on Christie and we went to the Uber together, all of that. You could, tell the viewers about that while I do this.
Well, the big takeaway from that is honestly that felt like eons ago, but I just remember, like, as I said, we met on Instagram and we were just kind of chatting as friends there for a long, long time without meeting face to face. And at one point, of course, we're both musicians. She mentions Object Studios to me, and of course, I said, yeah, well, absolutely, I would love to play there as well and perform there. Let me know, time and place, etc., etc. And I actually was kind of curious how it was going to go, finally seeing each other face to face. Because, the thing about online meetings and, making friends online is you never know sometimes if people are putting up a front of sorts or not. So that is to say, is this person actually genuine? Not that I was, thinking this off the top of my head or anything like that, being accusatory of her, but are people genuine? Or are they just kind of like not being their true self? When we met for the first time, literally it was exactly the same flow of conversation that we had through direct messages on Instagram. We were talking a mile a minute, as one predicts, and there was really no difference whatsoever. So honestly, that was the for me the big takeaway. And obviously, um, after that, we continued to keep meeting at objects and performing. Uh, we never really did do a duet though, did we? I don't think.
No, but
Which
that could still
that doesn't
happen.
even make sense.
I
We're
know.
supposed to. We were supposed to.
We were supposed to.
And you know
But
what?
you still have to do that recording, that voice.
That's right. Oh, I haven't forgotten.
That's gonna be hilarious. So for those of you guys wondering like what recording you're talking about, so I actually wrote a I guess like a breakup song or so. And Alex is supposed to be doing kind of like the voice memo of the breakup. So
Essentially, yes. I'm the
yeah.
guy leaving the message on the answer machine. I'm that asshole. Basically.
People are gonna be listening to the song and be like, what a guy. What?
That's me. And you know what? You can blame me because it's gonna fully give my stage name. Like I guarantee it's gonna say featuring Alex Chaos. It's like, oh, that Alex Chaos, what an asshole. you know, affiliation is
Exactly.
affiliation. No, but the song is actually gonna be slamming. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that one whenever that one is officially released.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get, so my goal is to get like 6 songs released this year, which is gonna be like me having to work like really hard and also be on people's asses about like mixing and mastering and stuff, especially Andrew. And also my mom's husband, Gabriel.
Right,
So,
right, right.
I'm like having to count on, family and partner and to be like, listen, like it's chop chop, let's go, let's get
Gabriel, so Gabriel, he mixed your was he the one that mixed Cookie Monster?
Yeah, and the other one as well, Menino. He
Oh,
did
okay.
both of
Okay.
those.
Cool.
Yeah, he usually does like most of my tracks and stuff. So we did Cookie Monster together, and that's a whole process. I'm actually probably gonna have him come up on the podcast at some point to also kind of talk about the Cookie Monster, talk about tattoos and stuff. Since yeah,
Nice.
but yeah, it's interesting. So objects. Now that we're back on
Yeah, yeah.
back on
Let's
track. So where were you in the story, or did you finish the story?
I kind of, skim I did the like shortened version
The
of the
shortened
story.
version.
Whatever I felt was the shortened version.
Oh yes.
I basically said how we had been talking, just sorry guys, small recap.
Yeah.
Talking about how we had just been, talking like through DMs as friends for so long, and we hadn't met face to face at this point yet. And then that's when you brought up objects to me, seeing as we
Mm-hmm.
are both musicians. And to which I said, yeah, I absolutely want to perform there. I'm down. And just tell me when and where, and or like name and place, address, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And when we met face to face for the first time, literally no change because I was kind of like alluding to the fact how when you talk to people online, you never really know if someone's putting up a front or if this is how they really are in person,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's just one particular side online and then it's completely different when you talk to them. Literally, guys, no change. Like we were talking just aimlessly for like hours, like throughout that entire evening, as well as performing. And I think I left off somewhere around that, like open
Yeah.
ended, like, and that's when I think around you came back and we started talking about why the hell didn't we duet though?
I had I had like the post pop up like a year ago today of like your like first performance at like OBJX.
Oh no way!
Yeah, I had that recently
Was
pop
today
up.
actually the year? Wow,
Yeah, isn't that
time
crazy?
flies.
That
Yeah,
is insane. Like it's like oh my god, like so many things that I think about. I'm like, what the hell? Like we're already in March. Just like think about that, you know? Think about that. Like
I'm gonna
twenty
be
twenty
perfectly
three.
honest. I haven't been thinking about that. Like as far as it's still January 2023 to me. You know,
Yeah, it feels
uh,
like a long ass January.
pretty much. Everything just felt like it's been kind of not a sense standstill per se, but just kind of very slow moving, like
Mhm.
molasses style moving. Not even tortoise. I think molasses is slower, right? I have to
I
look at
I
it.
I think so.
That's gonna bother me now if I
That's
don't like
gonna
fact check that. I just, for the record, guys, I am not stupid. It's just I don't really know what is slower, molasses or a tortoise. That's a good question.
That's like a science thing.
Yeah, and oh god, you'd think that I would, like being in the field that I am, know this like offhand, but
You know, we
nobody.
learn something new every day.
No, this is true. Not
Yeah,
every single person has all the answers, guys. That's just how it is.
exactly. Oh, so okay, so we're almost getting into our little sex segment, but
Ooh,
now we're gonna have the last question before we get into that, which is there something you learned or unlearned recently?
something I learned or unlearned. Um, well, I feel like I'm always in the process of trying to, I guess, let go. So since we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about unlearning, letting go of, like, for example, my really intense emotions,
Mm-hmm.
because as vendetta and vindictive as I can be, um, it's not necessarily the healthiest route to go.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's very interesting because very recently, um, my cousin invited some of the family and close friends out because he kind of wanted to have this spiritual rebirth on his own journey. And he had us do this thing. We were just out at a park in the east end of town in Toronto. And he said, okay, so if you guys want to participate, you can write something down on a piece of paper that I've got for you here, letting something go or something you want to bring into your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of just got me on this whole, thought process of, huh, I haven't thought about that and done some soul searching in a long time. So, what do I want in my life as of currently, and what do I want to let go of? So, one of the things I said I wanted to let go of, or that I've been learning right now to do, is just kind of let go of that, a little bit of that hostility. Like you said, it's really hard for us. Like, never forget, forgive but never forget. But you know, try to just minimize that instantaneous aggression that sometimes pops up in the anger from that Scorpio side that we also know and love.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I think I'm trying to learn, in realistic senses. Yeah.
No, that's pretty great. Yeah, I actually did that before. I did the burning of the paper and all that stuff. Like I
So
also
you're
did.
you're ahead of the game then. In that case.
I love doing those things. Like even on New Year, I have like a bunch of New Year traditions that are like
Hmm.
Brazilian New Year traditions and stuff. Like you have to like eat lentils with your like toes like pointed up for good luck.
I
And then
love lentils. That's a great diet
yeah,
for the
yeah, it's good.
gym, by the way.
And then you also have like a so you get like a pomegranate
Mhm,
and you eat like six pomegranate seeds
mhm.
and then you kind of like get rid of like the fruit, just the seed, and put the seeds in a small little baggie and you put it in your like wallet like throughout the whole year and it's supposed to like give you money.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
there's a couple of things and then I also have like a list where you write basically every single thing you want to achieve this year. You write
Okay.
one and then you burn the other list. So you kind of like copy it
Okay.
twice. You burn one list and then you kind of like,
See, that's where it differs, because whether the list was positive, excuse me, or negative,
mm-hmm.
we had to burn it either way. So that's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. Yeah.
That's actually interesting that you say that you only burn the one. And sorry, my brain goes on really weird tangents. I want to go back to the toe thing for a minute. The pointing of toes.
Yeah.
So I kid you not, this was like my thought going through it as we were talking about it, or as I was listening to you rather. So what happens, like, I mean, not everybody is extremely dexterous in the feet or in certain joints, right?
Yeah.
So if you're one of those people that really can't move your toes, like there's not a lot of wiggle room, no pun intended. Um, what happens if you can't point your toes up? Does that just mean you don't get good luck in that case, or does that minimize like the emphasis of the whole point of that tradition?
I
Or
guess what you can do is like prop it up as long as it's not on the ground.
okay, okay, that's fair.
So, you know,
So
I mean
any
like you
form of
always
like,
adapt to the thing. So
as as that U2 song says, elevation. That's an oldie. I know. I'm really old, so I don't know if your viewers would know that one. I don't know the
who knows?
demographics.
They might know. Like there's it's a surprising. The demographics I find are usually surprising. Also, like I find that there's more males than females that
Fair.
look at my content, and even like all of like the sexology stuff that I've been posting as of recently, all of like the men have been learning from it, or men have been DMing me and being like, this is very interesting. Wow,
It's
you're
somehow
giving us tips. Yeah.
that's such a shocker that the men are tuning in for the sex portion. What? Who would have
Yeah.
thought? What
Right?
a
Who would have
surprise!
thought? Exactly. I'm curious to see how it's gonna go in that sense, because like I have like a certain 3 topics that are gonna be kind of like talked about. And there's one topic that's definitely gonna be like women's health and stuff. So I wonder
That's
how
a
that's
very,
going to
very
be.
important topic.
Definitely. So wonder how that's gonna be. Like if the men are still gonna be tuning in for that, or if they're just going to be like, oh, like this is too girly for me. So
See,
I'm
that
curious.
that kind of stigma definitely needs to stop, because
It
honestly,
does.
if you tune in, like, you will understand your partner that much better, with pertaining to the particular health issues that you're probably going to be going into. I
Mm-hmm.
can only imagine, from diets to even periods and the effects of that, on women's health, and as you age, through the cycles over time, etc., etc.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
something, guys, pay attention. Trust me. It will help you. It will help you in every way possible, not just obviously in your dating life, but just in a sense of relation and just basic human understanding. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because well, yesterday was the International Women's Day and all of that
mhm,
stuff,
mhm.
and um like me and my mom talk about it quite a bit as being like a very like patriarchal day, and it's like there's no men's day, like man's day, because it was created by man, but there's a lot of interesting kind of like I think it's like it's good and bad in a certain way. It's good for the reminder of being like, oh, like, love the women in your life and appreciate the women and honor them and all of that stuff. But then it's bad that it's just like it's only that one day that they'll remember to do that thing. Or
Or
not all
Valentine's Day
men,
or something
right?
like
Just
that.
like Valentine's Day, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, you have to do this whole big romantic gesture, and it's gonna be like that one time a year where you're gonna be like going all out, and then for the rest of the year you're like, oh, like you're not gonna do the simple things, which is like they're tiny little things that like I find that make women happy. For example, like one of my friends here as well, like she's just like, oh, I would love to just get flowers every month. You know what I mean? Like it's something so simple, like just flowers every month. You know what I mean?
And that's
But
the
it's like,
thing that I
yeah.
feel like that's almost a dying breed in a way, because I don't see that happen unless it's, again, a special occasion or things like
Mm-hmm.
that, like a birthday or it's never like it's been a very long time, just from my personal observations, that I've actually seen somebody bust that out as a surprise just on a random day for no particular reason.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not and I'm not even talking about, let's say, if there's a job promotion that at hand, or just like
Mhm.
a, hey, I was walking by this store, I saw these flowers, and I just thought, what the hell, why not? Because I love you.
Yeah, that's cute. I like that. My dad does that actually, like he
Oh,
does that
okay.
to me like all the time. Like whenever he would visit me, he's like, "Oh, I got you these fresh flowers." I'm like, "Oh, look at this. It's nice." But that's like I want to definitely kind of like still have that like when I have sons and stuff like to just like show them like,
Mhm.
you give flowers to
And
people.
that's interesting too, because that's part almost of a, I guess, a family dynamic. Like, you're more
Mhm.
likely to receive those kinds of gestures, I feel, from family members. But when we're talking in the sense of romantic partners,
Mhm.
that it's a little bit lost on that particular demographic, I feel,
Definitely.
for whatever reason. And I think that's, I don't know if it's getting better or worse. I can't really like speak for that. I just know that that has been scarce for a long time. And I mean, the dating scene has changed quite a lot in the last, even, oh my God. I mean, again, I'm old, so like I'm 33. Even in the last 10 years for me, just like going through the motions, dating,
Mhm.
meeting women, how you meet women, even. Oh, like, don't we'll probably touch upon the apps and
Well,
everything
now it's great
shortly.
because we're gonna enter our sex segment, which actually
Hey.
I was just thinking about like I've been thinking about ways like intros and stuff. Like I kind of want to create a little musical intro for that. So eventually I'll have like an intro for the sex segment. We'll see what happens.
You
But
definitely should. I think that would be neat.
right? It would be interesting. But yeah, so let's talk about your dating life for now. Like
All
literally like
right, all right.
full display.
Full
That's
display. All
why
right. Well, how far back do you want me to go? I mean, I could
so
go way back, or I could start, more modern, whichever.
right. Yeah. The funny thing is that like I've been sharing to a couple of friends and stuff like about like what this sex segment is gonna be like.
Hmm. Hmm.
And a lot of them were like, wow, this is very intimate. I'm like, that's why I kind of like make sure that the person's comfortable to speak about certain topics beforehand. Because like there's some people that are just not comfortable in sharing that parts of their life. They want to be more private or stuff like that. But
Right.
I want to have like open conversations and stuff with men and women and stuff about like how their dating experiences are going and the ups and the downs of it and how was growing up, for example. Like let's start there for like, just before we get into kind of like where you are now.
Okay.
Um how was like sex talked about like in your family in particular? Like how was that like growing up? Like
So
was it like a
interestingly enough,
taboo or
my mom, as I guess as conservative as she may be. So my mom has pretty much only had two partners in her entire life.
mm,
My sisters, they have a different father because my mom was married and widowed.
mm-hmm.
And so yeah, she's only been with my sister's dad and my dad. So you can imagine, like, someone like me having a certain amount of partners. Anything over two is gasp worthy or shock worthy for her. Um, you know, but going back to that, as conservative she may be, and this is the key here, she is actually very open minded in the sense that her philosophy was, if you're old enough to ask the question, you're old enough to get the answer. So
Ah,
I was
okay.
4. I was 4 years old, and I asked my mom at 4, "Hey, mom, where do babies come from?" Well, I got the answer, all right. Like, she basically showed me a book. I don't remember if it was so much a picto book or, like, I remember there were pictures like affiliated with the words, which obviously that's how kids learn too, especially at
Mm-hmm.
that age. So I had the talk like really early, and basically as if I had anything I want to know. In that sense, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I'm very, very blunt and upfront with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we don't see eye to eye on like topics like that or whatever, or sometimes I might be a little crass or a little crude, but um no, she it's I've always been open with her. Strangely enough, it's my dad I can't talk with those things. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's interesting.
We act as if like nothing like that happens. In fact, if we want to fast forward a little bit, or
Yeah.
should I wait until we
Go ahead.
talk
Go
about the
ahead.
loss of virginity and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Well, whatever, like, just flow
So
with it.
I lost my virginity when I was 18. It was after I had turned 18 in high school, like my final year. It wasn't like entirely like American Pie or anything like that. No, but I just remember like that was my first, steady, stable relationship.
Mhm.
And so what would happen is obviously like living at home with my dad at 18, and you want privacy when your girlfriend comes over.
Mhm.
So I would tell my dad, "Hey, don't you have like any like shopping at Costco to do or anything like that? Like, don't you have somewhere to be?" And my dad, he wouldn't clue in as in like why I was saying that. He would just be like, "Oh, actually, yeah, I do have to buy some milk or whatever it was." And he would leave. And the thing is, like, at one point in time, he actually told my mom, "Oh, like Alex doesn't really want me to come back to the house for like another hour or something like that. He's kind of like kicked me out or whatever." And my mom clued in right away, and she was like, "What do you think your son is doing at home right now?" Literally. And my dad like was like, "My son? No, no, he's not like that." But my mom just she knew. And then she gave
That's
me a
so
call.
interesting. Like, I
She
find
gave
that
me a
that's
call out of the blue, and she
yeah.
told me, she's like, "You can't be kicking your dad out of your house. If you want to do that, that's fine or whatever, but it's his house too," basically. So I had that kind of a talk, and just to give you an example of the difference of dynamic in terms of like my conversations with my parents.
Mhm.
Um, I can, but then it's the flip side. I can talk about things with my dad that I can't talk about with my mom also.
Mhm.
But specifically with this topic, yeah, it's my mom. I'm more open with.
Yeah, that's pretty funny
So
actually.
growing up, I mean, it wasn't like something that was super taboo, and
Mhm.
as I grew up, I got into like as every teenager does, seeing those late night softcore movies, like after hours when you're supposed to be asleep on like Channel 7, which I think was like City TV at the time, if it if it still is. No shaming the television company or anything
Imagine like they
like
come out and they're like, "This is false news, by the way."
that. Right? It's like we don't have underage kids watching our programs. I mean, to be fair though, they cover their ass. Like they give that,
Yeah,
warning at the
definitely.
beginning of the beginning of the show and whatnot.
Mhm.
But I mean, even that, like I've had some weird situations, man. Like I've been caught watching that show by my mom one time. I'm sure like there's a lot of people that can relate. And they're not gonna admit it because I'm sure your male demographic listening are gonna be like quietly like, "Oh, true, that happened to me also." They're not gonna say that out loud though, but me being like, whatever, it happened. You know.
Mhm.
And you deal with it like anything. I often wonder, if ever I had a kid myself, like how would I react in that situation? Like catching like something on the computer or whatever on an iPod, I guess now, or who knows what it's gonna be then, what kind of technology is gonna be used, but just that whole like how do you actually deal with that? But I think I can say like my parents handled that pretty well,
That's
honestly.
pretty good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, interesting thing that I wanted to talk about is so I talked a little bit about this on my previous podcast, but
Mhm.
I kind of wanted to bring it up in regards to this that so I was listening to this other podcast that talks about sex and stuff and uh the sexologist on there, she said that she doesn't like to use the word fantasy when talking about fantasies because a lot of people take like misinterpret fantasy as it being kind of like this big thing where like you have like a plot and you have like role playing and costumes and like it's like oh like you have a sex fantasy of like Harry Potter or some shit. Like it has
The
to be
truth
like
of the matter is the a fantasy can even just be something simplistic as like situational,
Yeah, yeah,
and
exactly.
like it could just be like where you even want it to happen. Like maybe you
Yeah,
have a quote unquote fantasy of, oh, like I want the sex to be in a public library, or I want it to be in the back of a bus or something like that. Don't do that though, because don't get arrested or anything like that. I'm not trying to condone public indecency or whatever, but I'm just throwing out different like
except for the
places.
nude beach.
Right, right. That's an interesting one. Fantasies at a nude beach. No
Oh
one
my god,
ever, no one ever picks that actually. Like people
I'm
always pick the
dead.
most. I guess it's because you might expect that to be more likely. It's like, well, everybody's nude, something's bound to happen. I mean, I'm sure people have those thoughts, right?
I've seen it happen. Like
Oh, really? Okay. I
I
have
at the
not.
nude
I have not.
at the
So
nude beach, there's this like really old couple. Like they were definitely like 70, 80. And this woman's laying down and this man like rolls like on top of her and you literally see like one, two, three roll off. Like
that
that.
almost sounds like a I can't remember the animal I'm trying to think about now. What is it? A sloth, or is that how they
I mean,
I
like,
don't know, fornicate?
bold. Like, it's like when I guess when people get older, they just don't give a fuck anymore. It's whatever.
That's one of the, I think it's one of the joys of getting older. And certainly there was a lot of joy to be had for them, I'm sure, that day. No,
That's
but
so
I mean,
funny.
I don't even know what to say to that, to be
Right.
honest. That actually threw me for a loop because is there like not a rule? Because even at the nude beach in
Oh,
Toronto.
there's many rules. There's so many, but like the people still do it. Like I mean, like there's also like the heterosexual area and then
Mhm,
like
mhm.
the gay area, right? Like they have like those parts of the beach, and usually, right in the gay LGBT area, that's where you'll see most of that stuff going down, which is
Interesting,
is
interesting.
yeah.
And then you get, maybe people who don't know and they that are more in the heterosexual camp and they wander over and it becomes almost like BoJack the Horseman, where it's like, hey, is this a crossover episode? Like, what's
Right?
going on?
It's like there's even like children in that area, and then you
Oh
walk, and then
no.
you walk.
Okay. A word to the wise, honestly, do not bring your children to a new beach, guys. Seriously.
That's so funny.
Just
So for me, I would.
really?
That's the interesting thing. Is like I would actually. Yeah, I don't know. Like for like I feel like I like when I have a kid like that, my kid's gonna be like a total hippie. It's gonna be very
Okay.
hippie. Like, it's gonna be like the naked child. Like if it wants to be naked, it stays naked. It'll be wearing like a diapers and shit, but like the rest, like when it's going out, like it will put clothes on it, put clothes on the child.
So
but
kind of like a nudist at home,
but
clothes like
nudist at home, like
but
baby could be
clothed in
always
society.
naked, like I bring it to the nude beach, let it run around, do its thing, like yeah, I don't know. I'm just yeah, even with like
Interesting, because you know what, and I think that's more like a demonstration in the difference of our generational gap in that
yeah,
sense.
for sure.
Because I don't want to say I'm full fledged conservative or anything. I am by all means very liberal.
Mhm.
However, I think with regards to that, there are certain ages or time frames or phases, if you will, of someone's life where it's better to expose them and better not to expose them.
Mhm.
Just it's call it by ear or situational. But
Yeah,
and it's a very like hard area to kind of like define or depict, because also the parents in question, you're going to have different cultures, different ideas about that,
mhm.
and different concepts of when and why and how, right? so
Definitely.
so that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it is interesting. So now we're gonna get into your dating life. So up to all of this point, like views and childhood and sexual
Oof.
experiences, losing virginity. So we got all of that stuff. How is your dating life currently and how's it been like
Sorry, go
This
ahead.
is like such like an interview question.
Yeah.
And
No, I was laughing just because it was an automatic response. That's actually a response to how my dating life is right now. Like, well, but sorry, please continue.
and so is there any particular patterns that you have noticed in your
Well,
dating life? Like
I think
maybe these last couple of years or you know.
okay, so this is going to be very interesting in terms of my dating life. So,
Mm-hmm.
long story short of most of my dating life, so I've always been strictly, very, very strictly like monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from when I started dating around 17, 18, up until actually these last few years. So the reason though for this kind of exploration, if you will, or discovery of the self in terms of dating. I was in a long distance relationship for almost about 2 years of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And due to circumstances, unfortunately, I was not able to travel to get to see them. Mostly, like initially, because the borders were closed due to the pandemic, but afterwards, other situations that have arose after the pandemic seemed to kind of cool down a bit. Unfortunately, made it virtually impossible to ever get to see them in person, and our obviously our sex life or what we could make of that as far as a long distance relationship goes was suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're monogamous in a long distance relationship, that's not for the faint of heart. You have to
Definitely.
but we knew what we were getting into, initially. It's just your willpower is tested, your longevity to be able to keep that up within the context of the relationship is tested. For me, it was like a no-brainer. I could keep going till the end of time. That's just the kind of guy. I'm very dedicated, very loyal, you know. Excuse me. Just but at some point I felt like that was part of the weakening link of our relationship was the lack of physical intimacy.
Okay.
Like we did the intimacy we had was very much sexting based. It was very much, you know, video, mutual masturbation,
Mm-hmm.
phone sex, that type of thing. And to me, that was as intimate as you could get, with your partner. So
For
that
sure.
became that your views actually kind of change on that, like as an experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like for the average person, it might not be that big a deal because, oh well, I can just have sex, like in person. Like why would I want to do all the sexting stuff when I could just, see the person? You almost take the intimacy in that context for granted. But when you're put into a situation like a long distance situation, that changes the game up.
It
Like,
does. It
and
does.
so, but we actually, unfortunately, we couldn't make it work, and
Mm-hmm.
we wound up breaking up on two separate occasions. So the first time we broke up, we we took about 3 months apart
Mm-hmm.
during that time, and kind of did our own thing. Now, because I was in this relationship with her for so long, and prior to that, I actually had someone kind of bamboozle me a little bit and waste my time for a couple of years and keep me on a hook for it never to come into fruition. I actually was in a position where I did not have actual physical intimacy and sex for 3 years. So from 2019 throughout the pandemic, that was it for me. And I'll tell you that I I might go as far to say as I don't even wish that on my worst enemy, and that's saying a
What
lot.
did you think though? Like I so in like spirituality and stuff like that, they say that like when a man like it like doesn't have sex or so for like a long period of time or something like that it does make them kind of like learn something about themselves or have like a certain type of like I guess like more like understanding or some sort of awareness or something. Do you find that you had any of that, or do you find that you've hadn't? Like, is it something that you've started to notice differently in regards to your sex life and yourself and self-love and all this type of stuff? Like maybe even energetically speaking, like sometimes people say that they have more energy, sometimes people say that they have less energy, like when they're actively having sex
I
too. So
think
it's
that
just really
happens
interesting.
differently for everyone.
Yeah.
In my particular case, though, unfortunately, I think I was too fixated on the coupling thing. That's one thing about myself. So when I go through breakups or when I go through a dissolution of a relationship, I'm not at a point in my life, and I can admit this like fully, like openly, where I've learned to be fully happy or fully content within my own company. I'm
Mm-hmm.
happiest when I'm in a relationship. So when I'm not, I'm still kind of fixated on the, oh, I wish or I want this or,
Ah, okay.
and so there was no real epiphany of self-love in that way. Like you kind of like that's one thing you hope to aspire to, at least in my case, because if you have that, all the power to you. That's wonderful. And you actually do get more done, you're more productive and all those things. That's kind of a journey I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
However, my experience, um, it actually hit my mental health really, really hard. So it went completely the other way. That's why I was just saying I don't wish that even on my worst enemy practically. And that
Mm-hmm.
says a lot if that's the case, because I hate my enemies. Um, no, but seriously, it really is not super healthy to go that long. And I don't even think, even just as a guy, but as a human being, to abstain from sex that long. I mean, it's one thing if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it willingly, but if it's kind of out of your hands or circumstantial, it hits you that much harder, especially from a sense of confidence, from a sense of being, relating to another person in that kind of way, in that sexually energetic way and stuff. You you almost feel like detached even, and it screws with your emotions and your capacity to feel certain emotions for a time. It's really, really damaging stuff. It changes, I guess. I would suspect that even there's chemical changes going on in your brain, levels of dopamine obviously and serotonin are like completely like out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually I find is a danger too, because now in order to compensate for the lack of physical intimacy I was having, I turned more towards porn and pornography. That I feel has changed now coming back to sex 3 years later. And that was what I was going to say when me and my ex had broken up. I did have one sexual hookup,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that just got everything out of my system. That got me over my depression that I was feeling from, like, as a result of um the lack of sex for those 3 years. It got me out of that negative mental state at the very least,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really, really important. So that was good in that sense. But the sexual experience being fulfilling, that was a completely different story. To the degree that you would expect in an encounter like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but me and my ex wound up getting back together, and we were open about what had happened. Like I had told her, well, in our breakup, I had slept with another person,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, she had also slept with about four people at this point. So in that sense, it was, I don't know, I felt it was unbalanced, but at the same time, I wasn't really complaining because it's like, well, what are you gonna do? We each have our own journeys. But the main takeaway now, and this is going back to our long distance relationship, was I then approached her with, hey, do you maybe want to try again, but maybe try opening up our relationship? If what broke us was the lack of physical intimacy, and that's really the only thing, and we clearly still care about each other, why don't we just try to continue our relationship, but have, set rules and arrangements surrounding um, us being able to sleep with someone else or other partners. And thus
Interesting.
began my journey into, I guess, like a more polyamorous approach, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was a completely new ballgame, a complete learning curve for me. And again, our particular relationship did fail, but I don't think we approached it fully in the correct way when we did do it. I don't want to really, play the blame game and stuff. So I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But with regards to us together, um, yeah, I just think that true polyamory practice was not actually being practiced. But in my journey of that, I actually did wind up meeting an older woman through OkCupid,
Mm.
who actually practices true polyamory. So she actually educated me, and through us spending time together and also being intimate together as part of the package deal thing, um, I learned more about the lifestyle, and um, she was very encouraging in terms of just, well, I think it's important for you to seek out what you really want to feel satisfied. No jealousy, none of that. Complete openness, complete honesty. That's really one of the key ingredients I found in polyamory. What people often think that, oh, if you're seeing multiple partners or whatever, that you can't cheat in that regard. Yes, you can.
You
The
can.
cheating
Yes, you
comes
can.
exactly. The cheating comes in the dishonesty.
Yep.
If there's any form of dishonesty whatsoever, however big, however small, like if you've agreed on like certain terms, especially, you know, and that was the thing I always wanted to emphasize was full transparency.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that was particularly important. Like, I just want to know who it is, like, and for safety reasons, making
Exactly.
sure making sure that you're being sexually safe, and that's really important. Whether you're in a monogamous relationship or not,
Exactly.
safety first, absolutely.
I
Um, so my
I
journey
go
kind of
ahead.
just kept going with that, and that's kind of where I'm at now. Is I'm kind of, I would say I'm somewhere in between exploring solo polyamory with maybe a couple of partners, and uh, but at the heart of things, my heart still wants monogamy. So
Interesting. Interesting.
there's this kind of like very particular wrestling going on. So I feel if I find that particular monogamous connection that I'm looking for, or that I want deep down, I might put my solo polyamory side to rest,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and pursue that. And that's kind of where I'm at now in terms of my dating life.
Yeah, that is actually interesting because I was kind of there last year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so
So you kind of understand then.
yeah, with
Yeah.
the like for example, even with like the open relationship and stuff like that, like I find that so I don't think even some of my viewers know about this because I made several podcasts in between my break and I never
Mhm.
posted it. So I think one of them had to be a little bit about open relationships and stuff.
Right.
I'm gonna definitely make another separate one just about that in general. But yeah, I find that at that point, like I was just open to having experiences and dating and sex and all of that. But deep down inside do like I am more of a monogamous like person. Like I much prefer that. I like having my person. Like I just like, my
See
partner.
what I mean about being twins, guys? This is what we're talking about.
So yeah, but I think that's a thing too with like for example with the Geminis, like being flexible in that. Like we're very
Right.
adaptable to situations, environments, people and stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's another thing when it comes to even the kink end of things with different partners, and
Mm-hmm.
different people are into different things sexually. I always make sure I figure that out and ask those questions,
100%. Yeah.
and find out, oh, do you have any hard limits? what things do you want me to do, what things do you not want me to do, what
Mm-hmm.
things are like kind of half on the table that maybe you're open to but not fully comfortable with yet, but maybe over time, all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of different angles. And I think people a lot of times, even in dating, I've noticed, and I can tell a story through Tinder about this actually that happened really recently. um so I am obviously like kink friendly. I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to make any like secret about that. And I wound up, kind of matching with this girl on Tinder that was also, kink friendly herself. Like there was some implications of that, so I felt comfortable interjecting into that kind of territory with her, just via messaging her on the app. So we sized each other up in terms of, if our kinks align and things like that, just in talking. And the thing is, so predominantly I identify as a sensual or a soft dom, and I'm very much into, or I have a preference towards submissive women or partners. And she was a sub by all, for all intents purposes, but there were particular, you know, things that I was into that she just were on her hard limit list. Now, I'm the kind of person that, totally respects that. It's like I still can be with a person that has that as a hard limit. I just won't do the thing. But she wound up just kind of throwing it off or playing it off like, well, I don't think our kinks really line up. So best
Mm-hmm.
of luck in your search. And that was it. And she just unmatched me without even having the conversation of, well, that's okay. I can live with that. It was
Yeah,
just, she heard something like, oh, well, I'm not into that. So, but didn't give me really a chance to say, oh, that's okay. Like, I don't mind not doing that. That's not like something I have to do in order to be fully satisfied or have
mm-hmm.
gratification of the sexual situation, whatever it is. So I think people are really quick to just jump and
People are
in a,
quick in general though, like even
yeah,
when it comes to relationships and stuff like that. It's just like
it's not that black and white,
yeah, exactly. The interesting thing with that is like when like people I find nowadays they don't have the same effort as people used to have back in the days in regards to relationships, even in
Mhm.
regards to problems and stuff like that. It's like usually back in the days, like people were more willing to kind of like, let's work on our problems and let's still
Exactly.
be together even though we have these differences. As for nowadays, like they're just quick to drop people.
You know
Like they're
what's
like,
so
oh,
funny?
you know what? Okay, you don't like it? Bye. Or, oh, you want me to change that about me? Bye. Like
I
it's just like,
literally had this exact conversation literally last night with a friend. So
that's so
they
funny.
they had just posted their like 6 year anniversary story on Instagram, and
Yeah.
everybody was like talking about like, how it was like who had been there from the beginning, who had
Mm-hmm.
seen them grow together and everything. And I actually kind of said, oh man, like look at you guys. Like I think I said something to the effect of, why is finding what you guys have so difficult now? And she actually answered me back. She went on a voice memo and said to me just how everyone now is like forgetting how to compromise, which is exactly kind of what you were just going
Exactly.
into literally a few minutes ago. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much that mentality is gone now. Like that was 6 years ago for them, but they worked together. They didn't approach it in such a, oh, there's somebody better out there. If you don't have what I'm looking for, I can drop you at the drop of a hat and move on because something else will come
Exactly.
along, and vice versa. And people have gotten so used to being in their own way, in their own element, they don't remember how to compromise anymore in a relationship kind of setting. They want to be selfish with their wants.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the catch 22 of, when people say, oh, I'd rather just be alone and work on myself. Sometimes I often wonder, is that like, are you, because here's the thing, I think to myself, when people tell me that, sometimes, look, I'm not going to totally slam that because it can be genuine.
Yeah.
But like, I think of my own goals, right? And in building myself in life. And it's like, well, I'm going to the gym, I'm doing all these other things. I'm trying to like apply to other jobs and further my career. But I don't feel like that's really impeding on my ability to reach out to you and get to know you as a person and fall in love with you eventually if it goes there. You know what I mean? And
Definitely.
people kind of have this front up where it's like, well, because I'm doing all these other things, this is completely like shut off. And they don't
Yeah.
want to, like in terms of I'm taking a break from being serious with somebody. And you know what? Sometimes you have to do that, and I completely understand that. But my issue is more the people that use that as an excuse, and it's the same type of people that, for example, when a relationship is kind of dwindling down, where people are losing the attraction and wanting to break up, and then they start, kind of pulling away, but they do it in a way where they make excuses like, oh, I've got a lot of like homework to do, or I've got like studying to do for
No,
the
I hate
exam.
that.
And the problem with that is that could be a legitimate reason for some people, and they mean that in every sense. But the people that use it as a blatant lie are ruining the trust for the people. Like when people break up and then they find out they were lied to, when someone else comes along and says the same thing, the next person might actually be truthful about it, but because the person got hurt in that manner, they're going to be like, oh, I've been through this before. And then they're
Oh
going to get
yeah.
on the defensive, and they're going to accuse that person of lying. And you see this kind of, there's a word, it's my favorite word in the English language. And yet now it's like
No,
escaping my
it's
mind, and it's going to bother me, but I'll come back to it. It's just that confusion of like,
hmm
everything like that. It's all the different layers, and not being able to decipher or decode what is true, what is not, and it all gets ingrained into like our current societal views and how we date. Just dating culture in general.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's interesting because I was talking to there's this cafe that I used to go to in Toronto all the time. It's like now it's so funny how to say
Sorry, I
used
just thought
to.
of the word convoluted. The
Oh, okay.
convolution.
Convoluted.
Yeah, just like all the different layers and the convolution of understanding, of the
Yes.
psychology, and
Yes.
just how people actually work when they're dating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a mess. It is a jungle out there, guys. Be sure to listen to Guns N' Roses. Welcome to the jungle. You know, you're gonna die.
That's
Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
but yeah, in so when I used to live in Toronto, it's just so weird to say now, but I used to go to this cafe all the time, and I've known this owner since I was like 14 or so,
Mhm.
and he's Persian, and we'd always have conversations, and like he was like a really good friend. He's almost like an uncle to me, like, and he would go out of his way like for things like we'd go out together, like we'd go get food together. Like he even helped me like co-sign my lease. Like he's like really nice guy. Like he just became like uncle. And then but he would always ask me to like coming into the cafe like how's the sex life all the time.
You
And
know who that
we
reminds me of? I don't know if you've ever watched the movie The Room.
no, I don't
Um,
think I watched them.
there's literally a scene. So it's The Room is a movie that's very infamous for being so bad that it's actually amazing. You
That's
need to
fun.
check that out at some point. It's the same actor. He's the actor, director, producer. Like he did everything himself.
That's so
And he
hilarious.
funded the movie, and it's so like you just have to watch it to see how bad
Yeah.
it
I'll
is,
I'll
but
I'll
how
check it
good
out.
it is. But
Yeah. Okay.
anyway, not to ramble too much about it, there's a scene in that movie where a guy is asking him, he's supposedly sitting down at a cafe with his best friend, and the guy's asking him something about how his business is going, and he goes, I can't talk to you about that. It's confidential. Anyways, how's your sex life? Literally, that is the dialogue verbatim. I kid you not. You
That's
have to
so
watch it.
funny.
So when you said that just now, I was like, oh my God. Are you Johnny from The Room?
Yeah, he would
So,
we would talk about kind of like views and family views and a lot of that thing about like, dropping the partners and all that stuff. And we were saying how so back in the day, way back then, families used to invest money into marriage.
mhm,
So they used to, save up money for when their kid is going to get married and invest that into the marriage and stuff like that. like the focus was more about finding a partner. Nowadays, the focus is not about finding a partner and finding the person in your life. It's more about education. So everybody is like wanting to study, wanting to better themselves, wanting to do like their career first. But then the problem with that, there's pros and cons to both of them.
Of course,
But the
yeah.
problem ends up being that a lot of people lack family values and lack that community. So a lot of people nowadays don't know how it's like to actually like care for somebody else or love someone else in that way because they're so intelligent intellectually and learning all of these other things that like knowledge. And then this is the interesting thing is what I find personally, I much prefer the partner first and the education different, which is funny because I'm very intellectual and like, you know, I like those things. But I find you need to have that base and understanding of like having good friends, having good family, having a good partner first. And it's not only just because like, oh, those things are important, but those things are important for us to be able to grow and understand and communicate better, to learn better. So like we end up switching that, which ends up delaying our process later in life, even for like people that want to have kids and stuff, for mating and all of
It's
that
so
stuff.
interesting that you bring all this up, and I think you put it very eloquently, actually. But I think I don't know which style I kind of pertain to. I think I kind of flip flop between both as I
Yeah.
date, and
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, there's no like real right or wrong way to do it, but it really does show like if you talk to people and get to know people, it's really interesting to see what side of the coin they're on. And
Yeah,
sometimes, and this also makes dating hard because sometimes you may be on one side of the coin and they can't relate. And even if you
exactly.
might have been perfect for each other, or it was just not the right time, or like, not the right timing to get together,
Mm-hmm.
or vice versa, maybe it was the right time, but you never wound up meeting, and then something changes, all kinds of different factors in life, and it goes back to outside of uh, outside of even falling in love, like just with the self alone, what are your goals, um,
Exactly.
and all that stuff, and sometimes that gets in the way. Some people don't even look at it as getting in any way. It's just the natural flow or the natural progression. And some people, then it becomes a matter, if philosophically speaking, do you believe in fate or destiny? Like, I'll find my person eventually,
Mm-hmm.
or we all have that one true love, or we have many loves, it's just at what point in time do the paths cross, and does everything wind up just syncing up and working out?
Yeah,
So there's a lot of different, um, I guess, angles you can look at it from, and it's
definitely.
it's really hard to say. Can you even say which one is correct? Really? I mean,
Yeah. It's
so
it's it's hard to be, yeah, it's hard to be like, oh, like this is right, this is wrong. Like my grandma oftentimes says, like, she's like, oh, there's no right and wrong, there's just different. Which I like that kind of approach too, because it like, that's why it's interesting, like when I'm dating certain people and stuff, like in the past, specifically, like I've been in situations where like they're my third love, but I'm their first love. Things like
hmm,
that. So, and I find that those have different dynamics and stuff, because then it's like the first loves, everything's new, you're discovering yourself, you can still have the urge to want to be with other people and all that things. You're in different kind of like walks of life. That doesn't mean necessarily that just because they're your first love that you're not going to be with them forever or stuff, but it's very rare that that does happen.
that is interesting. And I think when I was 18, actually, I had that like, I wanted to be the guy that wound up marrying my high school sweetheart. Like,
Yeah.
that was my full on intention. I'm
My
very
brother is that guy right now. Like he's just like, oh, I want to have that. Like he's like, but I told him, I'm like, because he's like 20 right now, and he has never had a girlfriend or anything yet, like nothing. And but he's like, he's had people that like women and stuff like that, like teenage girls and stuff, being like, oh, like let's have sex, and he's like, oh, like can I take you out first? And he'd be like, and then they'd be like, no, like I just want to have sex, like and he'd be like, "What is with this?" Like my 20-year-old brother's like, "What is with this generation?" And he kind of like, well, I'm like, "What's your ideal scenario?" And he's just like, "Oh, like." He's like, I would want to find a girl, like she drops her books or something and like I help her pick it up. Like he
Oh, so
wants
he
like,
wants. Now we're going back into the fantasy realm a little
no,
bit, right?
it is, yeah.
Of
But
like
I was
how
just
it
like,
happens.
oh, I was like, oh, like, like the teenage love, the teenage fantasy, like we love that. Like certain, it's interesting too with the hope with that fantasy. Like when you're younger,
Mhm.
you have a little bit more hope in that regards. I find like you have a little bit more like this is what's gonna happen. I'm gonna
Yes.
find them at a cafe, and we're gonna be together forever. And like when as you get older, it's not that it's not possible. It's just that now it's a little bit more like reality sunk in, and you're like,
Yep.
oh wow, it's so
To
cute to
reminisce
see
about
that, to
the non-jaded youth of like yesteryear, basically. No, I get that. No, I think that's a valid point for sure. But it is interesting to me, like it's kind of endearing in a way that people with your brother's mentality actually still do exist.
yeah.
It's cool. Like it's cool to
Mm-hmm.
see that, to be honest, because uh, as somebody who is getting older, you do get a little more cynical and a little bit more jaded, and I think like when it's almost like a breath of fresh air when you do kind of come across where, oh, someone has this kind of value, like a more old school or a more traditional kind of value. It's cool. It's cool to see.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. But you know what? In different ways, we ask ourselves, I guess, the same question. What is up with this generation? You know?
It's yeah. That's a whole long
that is
interesting. But
that's a podcast for another
that is a podcast for
time.
another time. I do have some questions in regards to kind of like long distance relationships too.
Mhm.
So, what do you find for people that may be out there in long distance relationships, for people that are out there in long distance relationships that are monogamous
Mhm.
and non-monogamous? What are the tips that you may have for these people to kind of better their relationship, especially even with like time distance?
Well, first and foremost, so the time difference with my relationship was a good 7 hour time difference, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes 8 hour with the changing, like the clocks going back or forward and what have you. Um, I well, I could have afforded to do this. Like I know not a lot of people have the same luxury, but I was in a position where I was able to alter my sleep schedule or cycle enough that I would be able to catch them as they were waking up before work to have a little bit of time and to still be able to talk to them after they got back from work. And we literally talked every day, like without missing a beat. Um, Now, not everybody wants to do that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And I feel like that was another thing is there was, oddly enough, I know that that kind of came back in my face with a little bit of resentment, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody told my partner to do that. It was just nice to be able to do that. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, that said, you're falling into the realm of wanting to like make time for your relationship. Always, always, always communicate that. Even if you like understand that it's not going to be easy, especially with different time zones and different hours, to always catch people at ideal times. So when you can make that time, do it. Like, I know we all say, "Oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time." If it's important enough to you and for you, you will make the time. It's like even in those times where we're sitting idle and we say, "Oh, I've got nothing to do," or "I finally have a break off this. What should I do now?" And we always have those moments as busy as we say we are.
Yes.
Um, Use that moment to legitimately make a phone call or send a text or show your partner that you're thinking of them. A little
Mm-hmm.
bit of those things go a long way, believe me.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep that alive. That's very important. And communication is key there. If you feel like, oh, I haven't seen you lately, don't feel like you're being too needy. Don't feel like you're being too much. Speak your mind. Talk about your needs. Like, oh, I know this week maybe you had a lot going on at work and I wasn't able to see you, but I'm hoping maybe you'll be able to make some time for me over the weekend if that's possible. I'd really love to see you. I miss you.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that, it doesn't have to be antagonizing. I know it can be very daunting and you can feel like sad sometimes because it feels out of your control. It might even feel hopeless in some cases. But just always be on that with your partner. Be ready to talk about anything and everything under the sun. That's probably some of the best advice I can give regarding that.
That's great, actually. That's great advice. Which is interesting too, because like even myself right now, I'm in type of a long distance relationship that I didn't ask for.
And sometimes that happens,
And
because
sometimes that happens. That's a
life changes as you're going through stuff, even together. And I invite you to that same kind of advice that I just gave out now.
mm-hmm.
Something to keep in mind. It might make it easy anytime. I know, especially on the hour 4:44,
Yeah.
you take your breath. When you're taking that breath, keep in mind what I said and about things will be okay,
Mm-hmm.
or I will get to see, my partner at a later point, or, I don't have to be upset about this. Things will balance back because
Yeah,
it will.
it will.
Your situation, I believe, as far as I'm aware, is much more temporary than mine was. Absolutely. So, and that's not even that's not dumbing things down. That's just to say it will resolve even quicker. And
Yeah.
that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. So whenever you do feel stressed about it, or if it brings that for both of you, it's something to keep that in mind. Just take a step back for a second, breathe, and remember that this isn't going to be like this, and how much you two love each other, and that gets you by too.
That's
And
great. That's
and
amazing
also
advice.
maybe throw in a sweet word here or there. That doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
That gets you a long way, as well. So
So we have two last questions before we wrap this up. This one
make sure
is a
you guys
little
are wrapping it up. By the way, on that note, that's very important too.
Oh
That's another
yes.
piece of advice I can give you guys.
Oh yeah.
Safety, 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 safety.
Exactly. Exactly. So, this one is interesting because this could go on forever, but maybe just like a couple tips that you think is what are your tips at least for getting over breakups?
Ooh, you
Which
know
is
what? If you're an emotional type of person like myself, do not be afraid or ashamed to let a good cry
mm-hmm.
out, as needed. And in my case, it was quite frequent, all
Yes.
the time.
Oh, it happens. Yeah.
The interesting thing about that is, your first breakup is always the worst. I remember my high school breakup. It literally felt like a stabbing in the heart. I feel like I can actually describe to you what a stab in the heart legitimately feels like without actually ever being
Yeah.
stabbed.
Yep.
And that physical feeling of that sickness that comes from your stomach, and the anxiety that you get and that rush of pain to the chest. That's all very real. If you experience your first ever heartache, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't, lucky you. Kudos to you for avoiding that bullet. But I think where I was going with this is it never gets easy. It gets easier, but it doesn't. It will always hurt.
Definitely.
If you think that, oh, I've experienced this pain, you can't hurt me, wahaha, I am invincible. If you go in with that mentality, you're sorely mistaken, because it will hurt, maybe in a different way, maybe less, maybe more.
mm-hmm.
There's no real say. It depends on the connection that you have each time.
Definitely.
And so that said, I don't recommend turning to substance abuse.
100%.
I know that some people are very quick to do that, and it leads you down a dangerous road. Whether you're already a user or not, it's just never a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not in the right state. And I remember there was actually one breakup I had where, and it was very out of character for me. Um, I broke up, and I think I had felt at the time that it was a mutual breakup, whatever. But I had felt at the time that I had kind of wasted a little bit of my like years and part of my like the last stretch of my youth.
Mm.
And so I was trying to go out and party at clubs like with younger people to like feel to kind of relive like my single life and feel good again. And I actually found myself day drinking at like 2 p.m. in the middle of the week at a bar. And I remember one night, and this is when it really hit me like, what the fuck am I doing? A friend called me and was like, hey, what's up? Like, and I said, oh, I'm having a white Zambuca. And it's like, dude, it's 2 p.m.
Mhm.
on a Wednesday.
Ah.
I'm like, yeah, and but then I just, as I was finishing that last, sip, I was staring at the glass and I'm like, this isn't me, this is not me. I'm not a big drinker. I am a social drinker from time to time, but even then I'm a lightweight. And I realized I caught myself, you know, relying on alcohol as a way to cope, or it just kind of. And the interesting thing about it is I wasn't particularly sad or depressed, but I think I was just in some kind of weird I want to party mode. It was very strange,
Mhm.
and it was very short lived. It only lasted maybe a week or two tops. But I would say if you're feeling that way, talk to your friends. Just
Yeah.
don't take alcohol or substance abuse as a means. Seriously, it's not a good way to deal with things. It's not proactive in any way, shape, or form. Um, Definitely talk things out, express yourself. If you are of a creative mind like us, take up your hobbies. Like, remember who you are as an individual before you were in the relationship to begin with. I know that sometimes,
That's great advice.
in a lot of cases, too, there are people like there are relationships, sorry, that we have. Sometimes we lose that part of ourselves,
Mhm.
or we don't get to we become too codependent, and we forget that we had all these other hobbies or interests that we were doing before we were even in the relationship in the first place. So get back into singing, get back into those dance lessons if that's what you were doing. Paint, draw, I don't know, start a podcast for shits. Do something new, something that will just make you feel more accomplished, or like you're attaining goals in your life. When you
Mhm.
feel productive, you're gonna feel too busy to let those feelings really take over and make you depressed. So it's gonna
Exactly.
kind of like balance that and level that out. So I think those are some approaches you can use to kind of cope with a breakup. Um,
Mhm.
Everyone's different. Don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to take advice. I know we're all stubborn. I'm stubborn. She's stubborn, but I'm probably more stubborn. This is not a pissing contest by any means. But don't be afraid to take somebody's advice. If it's somebody, especially a source you really trust, and you know that they don't have any ill harm. Some people like to make situations worse, and will give you the worst advice possible because they want to see you suffer just for shits and giggles. If this is a trusted source that really has your best interest at heart, don't be afraid to, listen to their advice. They're all like, I know when emotions run high and tensions high, you don't want to listen. You want to see things through your way. And I know in the future, even I'm not going to take my own advice, but listen to what people have to say sometimes and just take it in, and maybe you'll see some kind of grain of truth to it, or something tangible you can work with that might actually be resourceful or helpful for your particular situation. But absolutely, stay true to yourself, stay true to your heart, trust your gut. I can't stress that enough. Trust your intuition, and be safe.
That's awesome advice. I think that a lot of people, yeah, I like to ask that question too because like everybody does have different tips, but that was beautifully said, and I think that
Thank
people
you.
will relate to that. And I definitely heard a couple of things that I was just like, oh, it's interesting. Oh wow, I totally forgot about those certain feelings and emotions, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of perspective, right? That's
Yeah,
why we talk to
exactly.
people, why we socialize as well.
Yep. Yeah. So
Exchange of
yeah.
knowledge.
That
Yeah,
is that is yeah, I this is exactly why I kind of made this podcast too, is just basically like perspective. It's like I learn things even though I know things. I don't know everything. And I learn things and then the viewers learn things and then we could have all of these open conversations and
absolutely,
share
absolutely.
these moments.
And if we don't say it in a podcast, we'll definitely say it in our music,
Exactly.
right?
All right, now for the last kind of part, I just wanted to ask, so for do you have any advice
Mhm.
or a phrase, or it could be like a sentence or two or something to share to the people who may be listening out there?
Ooh. See, there's so many different things I could say, a phrase or whatever. Honestly, as goofy and as cheesy as this is gonna sound, I'm gonna end by saying Akuna Matata. Honestly, don't
That's
like,
great.
don't take like, be be safe, be careful, but don't take life so seriously to a T, because things are ever evolving, ever changing all the time. Go with the times, be aware and be alert and be diligent, but also just, have fun and enjoy.
Mm,
Um, and, love each other, care about each other. That's the kind of thing we need to spread.
yeah,
Not,
that's amazing.
not pain and intolerance and suffering, and definitely not heartbreak. We've all had enough of that. So I leave you guys all with that, and plus all the other things I had just stated in the last segment, or the last portion prior to this one.
All right. So now to finish up, where can people find you if they want to connect with you on social media or anything?
Okay, well, Instagram wise, if you want to be the next Layla and the next friend of mine, I guess, you can find me at Alexchaos1. You'll
Amazing.
see all the different facets of my personality there if you haven't already. So the goofy side, the intellectual side, the music side, especially. And yeah, DM me if you want. Don't be shy. Like, I'm very open, very talkative, very social. Um, Even Facebook, you can find me at Alex KS if you prefer that platform. Even though I know it's a dying breed. Um, and we'll go from there if you want to, chat with
Perfect. All right. Well, that is the end of the podcast. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this conversation with me and Alex. And yeah, there's going to be plenty of more podcasts to come. You guys can always connect with Alex on all of the socials. Be sure to share this video to anybody that may be interested or needs to hear certain parts. I may probably have some timestamps on YouTube as well. This is going to be shared across all platforms, as you guys know. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will see you guys next time.
me. Been a pleasure.
Bye.
Been a pleasure, everybody. Take care.